We're in the middle of a around $100 trillion transfer of wealth from one generation to the next. In most cases, it's going to be handled poorly. But in your family, it seems to be going really right.
Told me one time you spend money like a drunken sailor. As somebody that spent money like a drunken sailor, here I am basically being given the responsibility of managing all of this. I don't want to mess this up. My dad spent 50 years working major league, putting all his money away, and the last thing I want to do is jeopardize that in any way.
Keith Alpert has spent more than 2 decades in financial services and recruiting. And today, he manages his family's investments and trusts as a family wealth steward. Shortly before his father experienced serious cognitive decline, Keith stepped in to protect the wealth that his father had spent over 50 years building. And now Keith is preparing the next generation to steward it responsibly. What would you say to anybody who's listening to this and they know their family has some resources, how to broach the conversation or what to do? What would you say is a good next step?
I think it's inquiring about.
And so we're going to look at it through the lens of Keith Alpert, who truly made a big transformation around all of this. Keith, welcome. So glad you're here.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you letting us in behind the scenes because I think this is a conversation that often doesn't get had because it's intimate and it can seem private. And yet the more we talk about it, the more that we can know how to handle it. We're in the middle of a around $100 trillion transfer of wealth from one generation to the next. In most cases, it's going to be handled poorly. You've seen examples of that, and we'll talk about what happens when it goes wrong. But in your family, it seems to be going really right. And I want to go back to before it was going right. Let's go, 2016, 17, 18 timeframe. What was true in your relationship back then to your family's resources?
I guess I had I didn't have much of a view into the wealth, where it was or anything. My father had pretty much managed everything up until that point.
Yeah.
I just had a general idea that he was doing pretty well for himself and he invested well, and that's really it at that point.
Yeah. And I seem to recall that maybe you weren't so sure how to relate to it, really. There was uncertainty. You had a business. It is not like you really loved doing that business.
Right.
And you knew that your dad had these resources, but you weren't really sure what was appropriate maybe of how you should relate to them. Does that seem right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. He always played everything pretty close to the vest, and he was not a big risk taker. So
Yeah.
if it had anything to do with, putting money into some unknown situation,
Yeah.
that would have been scary for him.
Yeah. He was really he was keeping it all in banks,
Yeah,
many banks.
many banks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there may have seemed like there wasn't complete and total trust between the two of you around that. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think that was, if anything, I think it was just more my relationship to money because, I grew up as being always told to save my money, and
Right.
I kind of rebelled against that, and so I always spent my money.
Right.
So I think that, on the one hand, that we both grew up in the world of finance, so he could trust me in the concept of knowing how to do things. He wasn't always comfortable with what I would do
Right.
in those situations. So I think that that's probably where things came, but I've never actually asked him that question. And so I don't actually know what his answer would be.
And it maybe you thought that he would even think of you as a spendthrift.
Oh, he definitely thought me,
Yeah.
because he told me one time you spend money like a drunken sailor.
Right.
So, that's pretty much, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And yet there came a point at which it made sense for us to sit down with him and your stepmom and have a conversation about money. Do you recall, it was a long time ago now, about 6 years, Do you recall what preceded that? Like what led to, okay, now's the time we need to sit down and talk about this?
It's hard for me to go back to that, but I mean, I was at the time we started conversations about setting up some family trusts, just create the framework for how to manage, the family assets going forward. I know there were some conversations about, hey, if somebody wanted to start a family business, would he be open to that? And so those were some of the conversations that might have been happening around that time.
Yeah. I do remember when we sat down with him that one of the questions that really seemed to get through to him was when I asked him why he created it. Why? Why did he create all of these resources? I don't know if you remember what he said.
I don't remember what he said.
Yeah,
Do
yeah, I
you
do.
know?
I do. I remember that he said that he did it because he wanted to create family security. He wanted there to be security, and and if I recall, him acknowledging that and him being able to start to acknowledge you, the reason he wanted you to be secure, he wanted your sister to be secure, he wanted your mother, your stepmother, he wanted everybody to be secure.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Makes
that
sense.
makes sense. I mean, both my father lost his father when he was 9, and then my stepmother lost her father when she was 16.
Yeah.
So they both came from, I guess, what you would call probably an unsecure
Right.
situation.
Yeah.
And so, money has always been this thing that, hey, if I have it, I know that, we have a roof over our heads. We can feed ourselves. And I think it was always all about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seemed as well to me that when we had this conversation, that him feeling from you that you also cared about that was almost like an unlock in a way where he could start to trust you. And the first step that we took in the process of him trusting you was, I think I said, okay, the two of you just need to sit down and inventory what there is. Like actually look at, what do we have here? Do you remember that transition from you not knowing to then knowing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember that exact conversation, but I definitely know sitting down in his office, literally going through every single file folder that he had, putting it in spreadsheets and literally documenting every single account that he had.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, I'm a data-driven guy and he is not. So, I mean, he's, all papers and all this kind of stuff. So having it all in one place very easily to see was great. It simplified everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, what I recall at that time is that I think I felt that I gave you permission, and I'm curious if you really received this. I think you did, to recognize that that was a job that you should get compensated for. Do you remember anything about that? Because before that, you were kind of doing this business that you weren't really into, and then you really shifted your attention, all of your time, energy, and attention to taking care of the family.
Yes.
What was that transition like?
I mean, in a lot of ways, it was it was relieving
Mhm.
because I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. And so knowing, again, we set up these trusts and basically I've been getting paid as the person that manages both of these trusts for the last 6 years. And it's given me a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
So, while it's not calling a major full-time job, I mean, it's still a full-time job.
Yeah.
Constantly, but it's also allowed me to veer off and open my gardening business,
Yes.
which I'm absolutely loving.
Yes.
So, yes, it's given me a whole bunch of freedom, and it gives, I feel great about being able to take care of the family as he was. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to do it a little bit differently in the sense I'm trying to educate the next generation, i.e. my kids and my sister's kids, as far as the grandkids, as far as understanding, money and just being smarter about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that I noticed, and perhaps it was coincidence, I don't think so, that there was a personal transformation in you around that time as well. Like I noticed that all of a sudden you began showing up different in your own life. Like maybe before that you were playing more or not taking as good care of your health before. And then at the same time that this all happened, where you stepped into this stewardship, you changed really so many things in your life. Do you think that those were related, and what did you change?
Well, the health thing, I still have a lot of ways to go on that, but I'm definitely doing a better job in that department. But the truth is that as somebody that spent money like a drunken sailor, here I am basically being given the responsibility of managing all of this, and just recognizing it's like I do not, forget about can't be, but I do not want to be irresponsible, that it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
And so it's been a hard journey for me because it's like I've been living a certain way for a long time. But just really becoming more responsible and more prudent around the decisions and not being so, quick to, you know, even when it comes to investments, just not really being diligent in some areas and just being I want to help the whole world. So if an investment comes to my land, it looks good. It's like, oh, let me put some money here. It's like, no, I got to hit the brakes and I got to be more, careful in and around what I do. But just, all of that, it's really like, I don't want to mess this up. My dad's like 50 years working, you know, major league, putting all his money away. And the last thing I want to do is jeopardize that in any way. So,
Because you're taking care of him now.
Yeah.
So shortly after that, we'll say, shortly after that, your dad really declined cognitively.
Yeah.
Really kind of quickly, right after you got clear about everything there was.
Yeah.
And I've heard you describe him and what he's like now. Maybe tell us a little bit about what is he like now? It's 6 years later. What's his life like?
I mean, literally right now, he basically can't do anything by himself. He literally gets lifted up and put in and out of bed. He's in a wheelchair all day. He gets fed. He has trouble swallowing his food. He can speak a little bit and he understands, and the people that he's closest to, he does remember, but he pretty much doesn't remember a whole bunch, anything past that.
But he seems happy.
He's content. He's content. Just the other day, he was trying to say something. He was trying to say something to me on a call, and I said, "Did you want to say something to me?" He goes, "I'm happy." I'm like, "Okay, fair enough."
I often refer to your dad as the happiest demented guy there is.
It's amazing. Like all the stories that I hear about is a lot of people in dementia, they get very belligerent and angry, and like we have not seen that with him at all. The angriest he would get is if you didn't give him a second scoop of vanilla ice cream.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Well, and I attribute that honestly to the role that you have played in stepping up in such a way that has him feel secure. He doesn't have to worry about anything because he knows that you have stepped up in this way.
I mean, I would imagine that's sitting there subconsciously. And like when I do see him, I do remind him of that, that, everything is being handled. Everybody's okay. He did amazing and he really knocked it out of the park when it comes to making sure that he took care of everybody. And so he succeeded.
Yeah.
He won the game.
He did.
He won the game.
Imagine that that this had not happened, that we had not sat down and had that conversation, that you would have stayed in your spendthrift ways, that he would have stayed in control, and then the cognitive decline would have happened. What do you imagine would have happened in that context?
I don't even know, right? I mean, on one hand, if the trusts were set up and that was then mostly things would be okay. But I don't even know if we would have gotten to that point.
Yeah.
There were powers of attorneys signed. There was control that was handed over, very free.
Yeah.
Early on.
Mm-hmm.
That once he really, the second he went into memory care, I mean, nobody can sign a POA at that point.
Right.
So, these things all took place when he was still mentally with it.
Yeah.
And just made everything easier.
Yeah.
Grateful.
Yeah. I mean, you may not have even been able to find everything, right? If he hadn't been there with you, tracking it down.
Well, yes and no. I mean, like he did keep really good track of all his documents. I mean, there was a folder for every single account folder. So, yes, I mean, if I would have went through everything, I would have found everything.
Eventually.
So it wasn't that complicated, to be
Mhm.
honest with you. I mean, he had a handful of investment accounts and he had a whole bunch of, bank accounts.
Right.
And that was easy. He didn't have any of these complex investments sitting around or not
Yeah.
really know what was going on. And so the information was there, but it took, like, I think it took at least a week,
Mhm.
um, like 6 to 8 hour days of going through all of this stuff to really get it all locked down.
And do you remember when you actually became in charge, what that process was? Was it, paperwork? Was it him agreeing? Like, what was that like?
When we were sitting down with the lawyers and we were working on the trusts, um, that was a 2 year process to
Yeah.
get all of that dialed in. And it was clear in that process, I mean, because there was a lot of very minutia conversations that were happening. And you could just tell, like he would just defer to me, like,
Yeah.
whatever he thinks. It was just too complicated for him to manage. And that's when I got a real good sense of like, yeah, like I'm going to literally have to deal with all of this.
Yeah, you're gonna take it over. You have seen the flip side, actually, just recently, when it's not handled. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, my fiance's family, had it's actually an ex stepmom mom, okay, who has who, who has a son, with her father that, she had some like heart issues and she was looking to get her stuff in order because she thought that, she may not be around for much longer. And she wanted to, it's not like it was a ton of money, but she wanted to make sure that it was going to the right place. And she wanted to not have her son, um, receive the assets because he had some gambling issues. He was not responsible, and she wanted the money to go to the granddaughter. And she had wanted my fiance to be the trustee on it because she knew that she would be a clear-minded person and not, bow down to this to the brother. And so we were having those conversations. We had come to you asking for some suggestions about some lawyers down in Florida. And the price tag was a little bit too high, and she passed on that. She was going to go find her own situation, and then the next thing you know, she died.
Yeah.
And she died before
Anything.
putting this into place, and we don't even know where things are at. We just came back from Florida from the memorial service. I literally went to give condolences to the brother. He wouldn't even look at me.
Hmm.
We found out that he had found out that we were talking to the mom about this, so he's obviously not happy. So here he is on one hand realizing that his mother was trying to cut him out of this.
Mm.
So it was strenuous to say the least. But the bottom line is the wishes are not going to be implemented. We believe that he is the executor and he is the heir to whatever assets that she had. And I don't believe there's going to be any opportunity to get these assets properly, to the granddaughters and overseen and managed properly. So that was a lost opportunity.
Yeah, and there's nothing that can be done at this point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just really not. And so, as people are hearing this and they may be in a situation where they're thinking about how to approach their parents about it. Because, I think there was also a context where you said somebody approached somebody and they were called a gold digger. Let's talk a little bit about that. What was that context?
Yeah, so this was on the other side of the equation. The father, who again, my fiance and her sister don't have a great close relationship, and even all their years growing up, because their parents got divorced very early on, and he's been a bit of an absentee father in a lot of ways. But I don't know. A few years ago, we went down and we visited with him, and we had a really nice visit. And then after the visit, my fiance and her sister decided to compose an email to the father, knowing that I was very involved in this whole estate planning and getting the ducks in a row and all that. They sent him, which would be considered not really an aggressive email, but just an email that's out of care, saying, hey, like, not sure if you thought about this, but just want to make sure that you've got a will in place and the proper people. And like, he just totally took it the wrong way, as if, these people that don't even have a relationship with me want me to put this stuff in place. They can only want one thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was kind of, the pushback on that, and things have not been great since then.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think that there's a lesson that we can learn from that, which is that the connection has to be there first, right? We've got to create a connection, and that can be hard.
Yeah.
It's like, how do we create that connection when there isn't a connection before we even start talking about the money or the will? And my sense is that it could happen through the lens of wanting to make sure that you're taken care of. And I think that might even be how we approached it with your dad to begin with. It wasn't about you getting the money. It was about you being able to step into your role to take care of the family, which is a very different frame than we want to make sure that the money's going to pass the right way after you die. And so we were able to kind of reach him through his own desire to care. I wonder if, like, reconnection could be made now through a different lens. Like, is that even possible?
I mean, given what I know, it seems like it would be really, really difficult at this moment. And, even beforehand, I don't like, it was such an estranged relationship.
Right.
In many, many ways. I mean, look, anything is possible if you come at it the right way.
Yeah.
But given who he is and how he operated, I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. He seems to favor the son. And it's hard to say, but I would say in a different circumstance, maybe with a different type of personality, there definitely are ways to get a proper connection.
Yeah, maybe he has more connection with his son.
Yeah.
And because that connection is there. So I think that the lesson that I'm taking away from it, and that I've seen again and again, really is like, we have to lead with that heart connection. And if the heart connection isn't there, it's really hard to then transfer the trust that comes with the money connection.
Yeah, I would agree, because, and I even said this to my fiance, like, I can understand why her father had the reaction that he did.
Yeah.
Like, I get the fact that, it was a very innocent, request, and, wanting to make things, but given the relationship, I could understand why he may have come at it from that angle.
Sure.
So queuing it up in a different fashion, could have given a different outcome.
Yeah, more heart connection first, possibly.
Yeah.
So taking all of these lessons, you have children who are young adults, just, like mine.
Yeah.
And what are you doing differently with your children now?
I'm doing my best, right? Because it's interesting, because I'm already, I'm trying to implement some things and some changes different than I did it, right? But I'm going to be 58 years old. And so my kids are 26 and 23. So for the last 26 years, I've been modeling my, loose behavior.
Your spendthrifty ways.
Like, spendthrifty ways. And it's
Yeah.
very clear that my son has already picked up on some of that. My daughter seems to be a little more thrifty, or should I say a lot more thrifty than that. I wish I would have, caught on to this a little bit earlier. But we did have a call with both my kids and their cousins, just to talk, just really start having conversations about, the youngest one, he's going to be 21 in November. Like, the conversation was really about, like, hey, you guys are all adults now. Like, you have to pay taxes. And there's just like, just talking about some adult things that in a lot of ways, parents may be handling, for them up until this point, and basically saying, hey, look, we're here to help you, but we don't want to do it for you.
Mhm.
Right. I grew up in a realm where my father would literally, both for my brother and for my sister. I mean, I was in finance, so I had the tools and I understood all this stuff. But like, my dad would say things about like, oh, she doesn't know anything about this. And like I remember saying to him, well, if you continue doing it all for her, she's never going to know anything about this.
Right.
So you have to push it back onto them, offer them the help and support and advice, but also be a little bit like, look, it's up to you to do this, 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 and this. Get it back to me when you're done, and I'll help you, get it to the accountant or whatever the conversation is. And just to get them to, hey, just Google it, do some research, understand, right? I don't want to lecture.
Right.
I've been guilty of lecturing for way too long. So I want to stop lecturing and give them the opportunity to do some of this learning on their own.
Did your dad do that with you?
No. I had the message I got was, work hard and salt your money away because that's all that's going to buy your freedom.
Right.
I mean, well, it's a good message because it's true in some ways, right? If you can create wealth, right, then you don't really, you're independent. You don't have to, you can kind of, make your own game. So, I mean, the bottom line to that made sense to me, but there was no education in the process.
Yeah. If we look throughout your life, would there have been an earlier time where you could have stepped more into the role of stewarding family resources, maybe made different choices if your dad had included you in the conversation sooner?
I think it's possible, but I think that and this goes with all of my parents, right? I had 4 of them. My stepfather's been gone for a long time. But they all, I call their generation called the children of the Depression.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're all kind of coming and they all basically grew up without anything.
Yeah.
Right. So like they come from the scarcity mentality.
Yeah.
So even if I was able to have this conversation a long time ago, I think the fear that was inherent in him and my stepmom would have been too overwhelming for him to take his hand off the clutches of the purse, so to speak, and to open up. It was just all way too scary, right?
Yeah.
We both worked on Wall Street, and the market's always going to crash,
Right.
right? He's wrong for 12 years, but
Right.
ultimately it crashes, right? So that just reinforces that it's going to crash.
Yeah.
It's,
And how are you being with that reality now? Because here we are at this moment, all-time highs in the stock market, but consumer confidence at all-time lows, maybe. How are you processing?
Today is what the word unprecedented is like one of the most, common words, whenever you're talking about finance these days. And I do believe, especially with the whole AI transformation and everything that's happening now, with, just the leadership that is just, pilfering all of, the American citizens, all of this that's happening right now simultaneously. I am trying to take a more broad view of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And like history is like, I ran a recruiting business, right, for 10 years. Right. And like when people go in for interviews, they always sound great. But at the end of the day, the only thing you can bank on is the background and what have they done and what have they done. So if you look at the markets, okay, over the history, okay, there's booms and busts constantly, but in every single situation, the same result occurs.
Yeah.
As big as the bust is, the recovery is always bigger and better than the last time.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just have to hang my hat on that cycle is going to continue.
Yeah.
Okay. So to me, it all comes down to there's no timing of the markets. Okay. It's all based on how old you are, where your money is, asset allocation, take your risk off the table the older that you get. Okay. And if you're younger and you have many years to go, you can go along for the ride and you can stay there. I did read something about there's more money lost for people trying to pull money out and stop themselves from getting hurt from a crash than the money that would have been made if they just left it in.
Sure.
And again,
if they have the time.
If they have the time, right? Of course. But yes, if you're 80 years old you should not be heavily invested in the markets right now,
Right.
especially today.
Yeah. What should they be invested in if they're 80 years old? Do you
I
think?
mean, look, everything is relative. There's
Yeah.
no, like, all of the stuff that gets pushed out to us on social media telling us, this is the way that, everything is predicated on your own personal situation.
Yeah.
It's not just about how much money you have, it's about how much money you spent.
Right.
Okay. And it's your lifestyle. It's all of that. So you cannot answer any of these questions, to a general audience. Everything has to be looked at on an individual basis. And it's complicated.
It's very
Right?
complicated.
And there's no guarantees. I mean, like, can you guarantee that you're going to get yourself 4 or 5%, even if it's just in fixed income with no risk? Well, you could for a long time, and then COVID happened, and then interest rates got cranked down to zero for like 2.5 to 3 years. And so, if you were banking on your 4.5% and you did have a lot of money, that's down the toilet for those 3 years. So you would have had like a goose egg. So, and then here we are, with a new head of the Fed, right? They're thinking, oh, this guy's going to bow down and start cutting interest rates. Well, based on job numbers just today and where things are at, like, they're like saying they're going to raise rates, and the market's getting hammered today. So it's, it's so day to day, and there is no, it's really all about your age and your risk tolerance and what you can stomach for yourself,
and what your expenses are and what's going to generate that. And you're really managing for a wide range, because you've got the 20-year-olds and you've got the 80-year-olds, and you need to manage the entire thing to make sure that there's enough to take care of the 80-year-olds.
Yes.
And of course you and your fiance, and then the 20-year-olds.
Yes.
And so is it that do you have buckets? Like this bucket is for the 80-year-olds and this bucket is for the 20-year-olds?
Yeah, technically speaking. Right. When I came into this and I took over, I know this sounds crazy, but my father was an 85% cash. Okay. Where was this? He was 80 at the time.
Yeah.
And well, that's great. If 100% of his wealth was, just to support him and my mom, then maybe that would have made some sense. Right. But like, if pieces of that money are for your children and your grandchildren, no, that's way too conservative. You never keep up with inflation. It just wouldn't work. So, there's buckets in a general sense. Like, my mindset is like, there's always going to be X amount of cash around, to make sure to get my parents to the end of their life, no matter what. No matter how, the market could crash, we could lose 60-70% of our invested assets, and there's still plenty of cash there to pay for my parents. And that's my mentality.
Yeah, that's the right.
Okay. And the last thing anybody wants to do is have to sell their invested assets when the markets are crashing. Right? So there's definitely, earmarked, accounts that are like, we're not touching this thing for at least 20 years.
Right.
Right. So those are the ones that, let it boom, let it bust, let all that stuff happen. And then I'll start taking a look at those things in 12 to 15 years and seeing, if there's ridiculous growth, then we can start slicing some off the table.
Yeah, so that is really what I'm hearing. If it seems really prudent that you've got this amount is going to take care of our needs no matter what, and really prioritizing your parents because they created it. You got to make sure that that's there.
Yes.
You got the long term for the kids, and then what I imagine is you've got what you can play with. That's like, it's yours, really. You're playing with it for your life, and you can have a little more fun. Maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny because the things that, like, the play money is stuff that, and I'm invested in some things that my father wouldn't have touched with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
And which is like, looking at them, it's like, whoa, these are good asset allocations, but the play things are also very socially minded investments.
Yes.
We're involved in some regenerative agriculture, some little micro loans to, poorer areas to help, lift people up out of poverty. Right? So, these are play areas, but they're also, they matter.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and like, whether or not they're I'd like to believe that they're all going to be successful because they're in areas that really matter, and there is money to be made in these sections. Yeah, so we're deploying to some risky things that the reward is there if they do well. It's, so
And the reward is there for you personally as well, because you're contributing to your community, to making the world a better place with those resources, which is important to you as well.
Yeah, for sure. We also have a small family foundation that we've been managing, and again, like, that wasn't really utilized as much. Over the past 5 years, we've increased the amount of money that we put into it and the different organizations that we support. Because again, it does matter.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, it matters. We do want to give back. We've been very lucky.
Yeah.
So we like to give back as best we can.
And with all of that, you have started a business. This little side business that you started because you love it, right? So you're not just relying on all of this. This could all go away and you could end up just a gardener. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, like, one of the things that keeps me up at night is like, okay, well, I'm getting paid a salary to manage all this stuff, but my salary is literally from my inheritance.
Right.
Okay, which that annoys me. Right.
Why?
Because, like, I mean, like, well, first of all, I've been handed this fear of money. So no matter how much money I may have, I'm still worried about running out. It's just like inherent in my being.
Yeah.
So I have that piece of it, inflation and everything, that's when you're paying $35 for a plate of pasta.
Right.
Okay. Like, these are the things. It's like, oh my God, like, I'm, and I have no idea. I'm not in the business of guessing when somebody's going to pass away.
Right.
And, like, at the end of the day, like, I have to be prudent about, like, how all this is going to work. So I just don't like it all going out the door. Like, anything that I can make on my own that's outside of me spending my salary, right, is gonna allow me to save some money. Right. And so I want to, not only do I love gardening and want to help people grow vegetables and do beautiful gardens for people, I also want to, call it, stop the bleeding a little bit, so to speak, on the money that's just going out the door.
Got it.
And so, yeah, that's a concern to me.
Yeah. So, and instead of, just continuing a business you didn't like, the recruiting business, really, you were just doing it for the money. You kind of had to, in a way. You created this business based on stuff that you love. Yeah. And so tell us about it. What is it like to be a gardener? What do you do?
Well, so, I mean, yeah, I've been growing my own food now for almost 20 years. And every year I take more space in my yard, more beds. And sometime last year, I was like, I want to help other people do this. Anybody who comes to my house, they absolutely love the garden. And so I just decided to, hang up a shingle and say that I'm running a gardening business. And I sent out an email last year, and 5 of my friends, including yourself, said, hey, help me grow some food. And that was, I went away for a month between April and May, and that's the absolute time I should be working on starting gardens. So I had somebody help me with that, but so far so good. I'm actually glad that I didn't get tons of clients this year because, again, I had parents and hip replacement surgeries and all this other kind of stuff that I was attending to. But it's slowly, I'm going to grow this thing, and like, I'm just very excited about it. I just want to try and keep growing it. And, like, I'll do anything to plant your gardens, to take care of your gardens when you're away, whatever it is. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, one of my clients, like, she would have a house sitter come in and be like, well, they would take care of the dog, but they didn't know how to take care of my garden. And I'm like, well, that's an ideal client for me. So if somebody has a big producing garden and they go away for a couple of weeks, like, you kind of need somebody that knows how to deal with a garden to manage it. It's not, you have to know what you're doing.
And no matter what happens, you're going to have food that you can share.
Yes. At least in the summertime.
Yeah. At least, right. And it's not the rest of the year, but
it's funny because, it's an expensive, people are like, well, you charge a lot of money. And I saw a meme that basically said gardening, the most expensive way to get free food.
Right. It's really
It
true.
is very true
Yeah.
in some ways,
Yeah.
so yes, but it's a passion project. I love it. Every morning I get my coffee, I go outside, pull some weeds, harvest some lettuce, do whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's just very relaxing.
Yeah. It feels good.
It does.
Yeah. It's a nice balance to being on your computer and kind of disconnected. You're like really connected.
Yeah.
to
And it's actually interesting. I was on my desk this morning, for about an hour and a half, like 6 o'clock in the morning. And I haven't been on my desk that much over the past month because I've been getting all the gardening stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's a nice break.
Yeah.
Come the winter, I'm probably going to be back tied to my desk for a long time.
Yeah.
But, from, March all the way through October, right? There's a lot of gardening to be done.
What would you say to anybody who's listening to this and they know their family has some resources, or maybe they think they don't have that much, but they've got something, like in your fiance's family situation, they did not have a lot, but there's something, and they don't know how to broach the conversation or what to do? What would you say is a good next step?
I think it's inquiring about, hey, are you open to having a conversation about wills and trusts and estate planning? Because, based on some things that I've been seeing, it's extremely important whether you have money or you don't have money, right? Just making sure, as our lawyer said, making sure the plumbing is in place.
Yeah.
Okay. Whether it's a beneficiary designation on an IRA account and even just checking accounts, any account, right? Like, where do you want it to go? Do you have a will? Right. And just really, prefacing it with, hey, this is not about me wanting your money.
Yeah.
This is about me wanting not to have a disaster.
Big
okay.
mess.
When you're not here, and really wanting to make sure that what you want is put into writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We sat down with my mom last night, my sister and I actually, and we logged into every one of her accounts. We saw she had no beneficiary designation on her retirement account. If she'd become incapacitated or died, that in the event of her death would have gone into her estate and then been stuck in the probate process. And, just with 10 minutes of sitting down together and looking at it, we were able to make sure that that's going to go in the right way. And so I know that my mom felt relieved knowing that we took care of that.
Yeah.
And so that's really the encouragement that I have for all of you, is to hear this and know that the next step is to broach the conversation so that I'm not getting the call from you after it's too late, where now there's conflict with a step parent or an estranged family member or a sibling that you didn't talk about things with, or you just don't know where everything is. And it just does take a little something to lean in and say, hey, let's get into connection around all of this so I can make sure that you're taken care of in the way that you want. And that's really how you will navigate the great wealth transfer in the best way possible. I think there are ways that we almost can't prepare our kids for life until they're in their early 20s.
Yeah.
They're not living life until then.
It's crazy. Like even Ari, she just turned 26, so she's getting kicked off of my health insurance.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And so I was trying to help her out with stuff, and she says, "No, Dad, I want to do it myself."
Yeah.
Great.
Key, I think, is staying in connection, and that's what you've done.
And I gotta tell you, just the conversations with Jed have been, God, he sounds so much more clear. He's more engaging.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's a relief.
It's a relief.
It's a relief. So he's growing cucumbers. He wants to make pickles and so on.
Amazing. So good. It's so good.
So,
Yeah, good. I'm so glad to hear it. Tell me about the healthcare proxies.
So given my dad's situation and where he's at right now, this is, and again, I'm going to give a lot of information here. So both of my parents signed a healthcare proxy probably back in 2019 or 2020. And it was pretty clear that if they ever get into this situation where they need to be on life support, or if they need to have a feeding tube, they don't want any hydration. They want no nutrition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they just want to cut off.
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty clear.
Yeah.
But we're now in a situation with my father, okay, where he doesn't need a feeding tube, okay, but he can't do anything by himself. They feed him, but he has a swallowing problem. Okay, so when, like, a lot of times when he's eating, he'll start to choke,
Yeah.
and like he'll be like, "Ooh," and he'll turn beet red, and it looks like he's choking to death. Okay, and but that doesn't constitute pulling nutrition and hydration away from him because he can still eat by hand.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
so. And I've asked my mom, and again, this is where it gets really crazy. This is because I've asked my mom, and I said, Mom, like, if you were in Dad's situation right now,
Yeah.
would you want to be alive?
Yeah.
And she's like, no.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but we haven't adjusted her healthcare proxy. We've talked about going to Switzerland. Like,
Right.
she's got major back pain right now
Yeah.
where we can't seem to figure that out. Okay. But all this is well and good when you're cognitively
Right.
there. But this, like, I guess what I'm saying is like having the morbid conversation of all these different crazy scenarios that could possibly happen to you and put them down in writing.
Exactly.
Okay. To basically say, if I'm in this situation, this situation, just stop feeding me, give me some morphine,
Exactly.
and just let me go away.
Right.
Because the only place in the world that you can have assisted suicide without having terminal illness is Switzerland, as far as I know. Okay. In the United States, you can only do it if you're terminally ill and, you've got 6 months to live and you have all.
Well, and what is terminally ill? Like, we're all terminally ill. Right?
Yeah. Like,
But like, what is it?
I'm dying a little more every day.
Yeah, every day we're all dying.
Yeah.
And so I think you're so right, because we do have this big challenge, like with your dad right now. If you withdrew hydration or nutrition, he would die.
He would die.
And is he asking for food?
He eats.
He eats. He does still want, like, it's clear he wants to eat.
Yeah, so it's like, again, like right after he had his hip replacement surgery, like he was losing his white blood cell count. They were giving him some extra blood. We literally thought he was going to die.
Yeah.
Okay. We were ready to just like, okay, see you later. And then 2 hours later, we get a call. Oh, he's going to rehab. And like, what? So he made that. And then ever since he's been in rehab, we pulled away all of his medications.
Yeah.
He's taken a lot of medications and he's actually more aware.
Yeah.
And he definitely can hear you in a conversation. He can speak a little bit. Right. So like, I guess, no, I would not want to be taking away his nutrition and hydration right now, given his current situation.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't know how he is, right? From the people that love him, it's really hard to see him having to get put up into bed, put out of bed, sit in a wheelchair all day, sleeping all day. It's not a good life.
Yeah.
And
he says he's happy.
Well, he says he's happy, but knowing a guy who cares so much about money.
Yeah.
Okay. If we told him that it potentially is costing almost $500,000 a year to keep him in this situation, would he want us to be doing this?
Totally.
Right? He may be like, fuck that.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Get me out of here.
Right.
Right? I mean, he spent his whole life saving all his money, investing all his money. And as we all know, the medical industry does a great job of sucking it all out of us when we get sick at the end of our lives. So I don't know what his answer would be.
Yeah.
And I can't get his answer. And so it's a very hard situation to be in. So like, the more you can get these answers from your family, especially if there's wealth there, because, hey, your parents may be like, I don't want you spending all this money on me. If I get in a situation, just whoosh, lights out. I mean, because that's my mindset right now. When I'm 80 years old, if I'm, if it's a matter of costing a fortune to keep me in a wheelchair so I can get fed every day, choking on my food half the time, no, I don't want to be involved in that.
Yeah.
It's too hard for everybody involved.
And and it really is just literally sucking resources out of the family and giving them to the medical complex.
Yes. Well, I do believe at the time that we are 80, 85, 90 years old, there will be like full-blown robots that will be able to do all this stuff for us, hopefully at a fraction of the cost.
Yeah, I still don't want it. I feel very clear. I really don't.
I really don't.
Yeah.
As my birth mom always says, she goes, just put the pillow over my face.
Yeah.
You know?
But then we go to jail.
Then we go
for
to
that.
jail, that's
So
correct.
yeah, but the morphine or like the whatever, so, some sort of like just take it out easy.
Yeah.
And the plans do need to be made in advance.
Yeah. And it really, until you're actually sitting there having these conversations, you don't even understand the specificity of what each one of these things are. Because we did have a conversation with my father's doctor when we pulled him off the medications. And like he did say that he felt my dad is in a terminal stage of his life, i.e., 6 months are left to live. But I'm not so sure.
Right.
Because he's actually been getting better.
Right.
Since his, it's just, he's a unique individual.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, you've done what you can, and now really it is up to him.
Comfort.
Comfort.
Yeah. He's in a palliative care comfort situation right now. Like we're not taking him to hospital. Nothing. If something happens, it's just gonna
no more hip replacements.
No more. Well, a hip replacement. Maybe I wouldn't. Like, that's the thing. It's like when the hip replacement conversation came around, it's like, I don't want him sitting in bed with a broken hip. That's going to be way too painful.
Oh, because it was painful.
It was painful.
I see.
Well, we didn't know if it was painful. He didn't seem to be in pain.
Uh-huh.
At least he was on some morphine for one day, and then he was on Tylenol, and he was like totally fine.
Uh-huh.
He never was like wincing or any of that.
Okay.
Really bizarre.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if he were to fall and break his other hip right now, like I couldn't see leaving him unattended with a broken hip because he likes to move and weasel out of his wheelchair all the time. And so I imagine that would hurt a lot if he did.
Yeah, it's really about the pain.
So, and it's, again, we got to have a caregiver with him overnight because he tries to get out of bed. And it's just, again, it's just another expense that's not necessary.
Right.
But it's necessary.
But it's necessary.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Keith.
Yeah, awesome.
Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Okay.
you got it.